Welcome to the Future Smart Parent Podcast, a place where my mom explores how to help us kids develop a new set of skills we need to face the future with confidence.
I'm Jude Fulston, an introverted mom trying my best to raise kids who are happy and confident, kids who embrace all that makes them unique while preparing them for an exciting future that really looks nothing like the world we grew up in. I believe there's a whole set of skills that our kids aren't being taught. These skills will be critical for them to develop in order to thrive in the future. It's up to us as parents to help them develop these skills. The Future Smart Parent podcast provides resources for parents and kids who want to be ready for all the ways in which the future is going to be different from today. We will explore this future together, bringing insights from top futurists, resources from smart people working on making our lives better, and most importantly, stories of parents who are parenting a little differently, yet very much intentionally for a changing world. So join me as we explore how we can be future smart parents raising future smart kids. Welcome to this episode of the Future Smart Parent Podcast. Today, I have the absolute privilege and delight of speaking with Vanessa Raphaely, author, ex-editor, and founder of The Village, as well as an imperfect parent. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Jude.
So, just to start off this conversation, The Village, the Facebook group, for me, it's helped our family find my niece student accommodation. It's contributed to keeping my kids safer and saner online. It's helped me choose the right air fryer. It's brought me hope, seeing the amazing kindness of people. It's given me perspective. I mean, when I see the stories of some of the single parents, and then I think of what my battle for the day is, and it's helped me share those perspectives with my kids. And it's brought me so much joy as well, just from reading the comments, feeling a connection with other moms, and of course also the advice, and just being a part of a group of real parents going through real stuff. But as the founder of The Village, can you just start off with a quick introduction to maybe the 2 or 3 parents left in South Africa who may not have heard of The Village? But yeah, just how it started, why it started, and I think the role that it plays for so many.
Wow. Okay, that's the whole podcast. But I'll try. I'll try and do it in the shortest way possible. We think and hope that The Village is safe Google for South African parents. It's the magic alchemy. It's what happens when a community of very diverse parents get together, reach out their arms to each other, and invest in an attempt, in an experiment to create a better future for everyone's children. I have always been a strong believer in community. My background is in traditional publishing. I built community around the magazines that for many years that were in the company that I was part of the management of. I built community around Cosmopolitan, which I was the editor of for many years. And when I bounced out, I had the misfortune to hit 50, to lose a child, for 2/3 of my other children to hit adolescence, and to really lose my way. So basically at that point, what I thought was, I need to find some purpose. And so I decided I've told the story many times, but I decided to start a tooth whitening and oral hygiene business. And one thing I knew, having bounced out of traditional media, was that advertising and media was in turmoil, and that I would need to find a different way to get my message about clean teeth across to the potential audience. And so what I did was, I thought the best way to do that would be to gather people around me in some form of media, so that I could communicate with them, build trust with them, and that in some kind of early influencer way, create ambassadors. Anyway, it's a long and windy story, but obviously that was a disastrous idea, the teeth whitening thing. But at the same time, and my daughter, my oldest child, will tell you this, that she was the most terrible teenager ever. These days, I know there's no such thing as a terrible teenager. There's just a human being creeping out of the cocoon. There's just a human being in pain. But Mila, my daughter, loves to own her muse of the village position, because what she says is that I needed help to deal with her. So I thought that the easiest way to build an authentic trust around a community of people was through parenting. Because what happens is when you have a child, you get every handbook in the world. And basically, the thing about toddlers and babies is that everyone gives you advice and everything works. What happens with teenagers is no one gives you advice and nothing appears to work. So I learned very quickly that there wasn't a solution, but what there needed to be was help and support. So at the same time as trying to do the business model for my Smile Bar, as it was called, I already
Yeah.
had VC for it. I was on my way. I started building this community of parents. And sometimes in your life as a content creator, I think if you're extremely lucky, some idea just ignites. And the village ignited like wildfire. So from the very early days when it was just my friend, and we literally started it from my girlfriend and my Facebook friend group. We had 200 members. Fast forward 7 years, and we have 61,000 members on Facebook. We have 150,000 members on followers on Instagram, and we have 50,000 subscribers to our newsletters and our digizines, of which we publish a lot. That the numbers are always impressive, I think, but they're not really. They don't really tell the story, because we know that on social media, the quickest way to gather numbers is to create rage or offense. The beautiful thing about the village is that it is free of almost every ill of social media. It's the rules of engagement are support, kindness, non-judgmental, constructiveness. If you've got nothing nice to say, scroll past. If you don't approve of someone's method of raising their children, it's not your business. There are 100 ways, a million ways to raise a good adult. Um, the most important thing is that we are here to build a community, because what I truly believe is that one of the greatest problems facing South Africa, for sure, and the world at large, is the breakdown of our functional communities. Human beings need to be sitting underneath a tree in a village square at the end of a day, talking to each other, laughing with each other, gossiping with each other, watching each other's children, listening to each other's elders. And instead of which we go back to behind closed high walls. We order in from Uber Eats. We watch on Netflix. And the one thing we don't do is reach out and touch, as the great Diana Ross has said, somebody's hand. And so we're trying in our little way to make this world a better place if we can. Not wanting to be too kitsch, but okay, I was kitsch.
No, not at all. I think that sums it up beautifully from what I see from the outside in. And I was actually thinking about this, and I was going to say that. So I'm also a big fan of Brené Brown, and in her book "Braving the Wilderness," she shares that story about a group of women who lived in a village and who would gather by the river to wash their clothes together, where they would connect and share stories and support each other while doing their hand washing. And then the story goes that over time, as the village modernized and people started getting washing machines, the women stopped going to the river. And not long after that, the rates of depression in the village increased. Now, Brené obviously also likes to use stories. So whether this was a village or not, of course, the story is true, and it wasn't the washing machines causing the depression, but rather the loss of connection and social interaction and that sense of belonging and community that happened at the river. And I think when I saw the story again pop up on my socials the other day, it really reminded me of what you have created in the village, right? And just a reminder of how important it is for us, as you say, just to have the space where we can gather and share and support each other as our lives, I guess, become more convenient and technologically advanced, as you've just mentioned.
I mean, if you think it is bad staying up late by yourself with a crying baby, you need to think for a moment about the parent staying up late with a crying adolescent,
Mm.
sleepless night with a crying adolescent. That feeling of desperation and pain and isolation is extraordinary for a person for an individual who functions best as a herd. We are, lest we ever forget, herd animals, and
Mm.
we need each other, especially. I think, especially when we are looking after the more vulnerable. And the other interesting thing about parenting through tweens, teens, and young adults is that the responsibility for being the family rock also goes upwards as well. So many of our parents are also looking after their parents, and not to
Yeah.
mention other children who may be young and very vulnerable, or they may have gone out, tried to launch and failed, which is another form of terrible vulnerability. And all the responsibilities flows back to the one rock in the family. And what we say is, if that one rock in the family is not okay, the unit is not okay. So while we believe strongly that there is no solution for life, it's not meant to have a solution. It's, as they say, the journey, not the destination. But it's not meant to have a solution. But what we are meant to do is to be able to be the cheerleader in someone's ears, to be the rock that they cling to be the solid presence who plods alongside them, to offer the feeling that no matter how scary or how bad or challenging, it's less scary, challenging, or bad when you have someone at your side. What we aim to be is the community at the side of the person who is aiming to be that support for their own vulnerable people.
I want to take it back to what you said about the fact that, when we've got toddlers and babies as parents, we are almost overwhelmed with the amount of information that is thrown our way from media, from books, from well meaning aunties and grandparents. And it can be really overwhelming, but also helpful. But the difference is that when you've got a baby and a toddler, there's not that many problems, right? I mean, your child's not sleeping, or it's not eating, or it's maybe not, I don't know, crawling, or you're lonely. But the problems are kind of same, because the toddlers haven't found their own identity and kind
I'm
of.
not sure that's true. I think everyone is the first mother ever to have a baby, and it's her first baby, and it is extremely overwhelming and terrifying, and things can go awfully wrong. I mean, a lot of us know that. But one of the things is that human beings are meant to be resilient. And one of the beautiful things that a nurse once told me was that barbecues breek nie. And I think that in the kind of genesis of the parenting journey, there is just more energy, more hubris, arrogance, I would say, more optimism, a whole mixture of things. And that's why our book is called We Were Perfect Parents Until We Had Children, because
Mm,
the truth is that the whole journey through parenting is humbling. And
mm,
what I think happens by the time you reach your teenage years is that there's a combination of, there's an epiphany that, and or there should be. It's not actually your problem to solve. What you are doing is supporting another human, and what you are doing is creating oxygen for another human to breathe. One of the greatest mistakes that I think we all make is in hoping for an outcome that suits us for our parenting journey. Whereas what we realize from the moment that our children leave pre-adolescence, I would say, that they are actually building their own
mm.
selves, and that they are off on their own way, not ours. And so that, I think, is the fundamental difference, is that when the babies are small, the that it is all within your responsibility. And then we have a cocoon to climb out as well as they get older. And that also requires a lot of help, because in a country, particularly like South Africa, often we feel that love, the best way to show love is in protection or preparation or control. because we are scared. It's a violent country. We have gender-based violence. We have a high degree of crime. We have a high degree of inequality. A lot of us don't live in safe spaces. And so giving your children the most crucial gift you can give them, which is optimism, gifts actually, optimism, courage, resilience, resourcefulness, means that we have to step back into our own unsafe space and let them go. So it just becomes very, very complex. But into my mind, it all evolves around one thing, which is that there isn't a win. It's not. It's not. There's not a solution to be looking for
Yeah.
when the children are in when they are growing into their own selves. All you can hope to do is to be the support that your child needs or wishes for.
And I think that, I mean, exactly that. And that is why your book is the magic that it is, because it's not giving the answer, but it's giving the voice of so many parents that, for me as a mom of a tween and a teen, I mean, I devoured the book in a weekend, and it just made me feel you are not alone in on this journey. And I love how the whole book is just filled with advice and thoughts and insights, and ideas. And some didn't resonate with me, and some did. Some made me kind of rethink some of my thinking. And that happens often on the village community, right? I'll often go into the community guns blazing, going, no ways, I really disagree with that. And then get sucked into the comments, and I'm like, actually, yes, I hadn't thought about it that way, or they've definitely got a point, or maybe I hadn't thought about what the teen's going through, and it's only, as you say, been from my perspective as the parent, and what I want rather than what my teen wants. So yeah, for me, that is the true beauty of your book, of just so many diverse voices, and just knowing that we're not alone, right?
That's the most comforting thing that anyone says to the admins of the village. Now I don't feel so alone. I don't feel like the worst parent ever. That feedback is actually what keeps us going. And yeah, it's absolutely true. There is not one answer. And the beautiful thing about the village is that as it's grown, it's become so diverse. It's people from all different backgrounds, races, religions. We live in the most unequal society on the planet. And yet, in this village, the one thing that we have learned is that there's no barrier to advice given open heart to open mind. So,
Mm.
the most privileged person on the village has been helped by people who are not able to have that privilege, but have learned such valuable lessons to parent around parenting, and vice versa. So people who have not had access to the privilege of connection or of knowledge are helped. And so the help goes both ways. And that's been incredibly strong. It's network effect at its purest, because the network is coming from a place of good heartedness. Everyone who comes into the village almost signs a contract that they will come in only to be constructive. And that showed us something beautiful in the human condition. None of us have to be perfect. Not all of us are. Not all of us have to agree with each other. On social media, normally the currency is disagreement. What happens
Yeah.
in the village, because of two things. One, because the admin are incredibly skilled, and all five of us hold very strong guardrails around compassion. But the other reason is because people understand the rules of the game and feel the need authentically themselves. So no one is coming in as a guru. No one is coming in with the answer. No one is coming in better than anyone else. And also, no one has to be good 100% of the time, but you do have to bring your best self to the community. So that has created something which I believe is quite unique actually, in the world of social media.
And you'll have to forgive me if I kind of jumble my way through this because it's in my head, but I'm not too sure I'm going to say it very eloquently. But so the first chapter of the book starts with us. And you include sections like being a good example, being positive, looking for the good, keeping things in perspective, and how to be kind to one another. And that's advice for us parents, right? But then you look at the way you manage and have created the village online group of parents. It's exactly that, right? The values to me seem to be exactly that. Be the good example. It starts with being positive, looking for the good, keeping things in perspective. Um, and it's almost like, I was trying to think of it. It's almost like, I'm not putting you on a pedestal here, but it's like you've gone before us and you're almost like the mom of the village, showing us how to do it through the book. Like you're setting that example, right? I, yeah, it.
The book is called We Were Perfect Parents Until We Had Children. I'm not perfect, and neither are any of the admin. I think a lot of the time with human beings, and you're not guaranteed anything in life, but what you need to do is keep on trying. And I think making that commitment to yourself to try, to step outside of what feels comfortable to you and what serves you, which is the narcissistic ego,
Mm,
and move into a place where you allow yourself the great privilege of service. And
mm,
I'm very cautious of putting women back into that position of service. You need to hold yourself with great self respect, and that is why it starts with us, because the greatest way to role model, say, let's look at a challenge to children. One of the chapters, how do you raise compassionate boys and feisty girls? You have to role model behavior as a woman. So
mm,
in my house, females, old people, vulnerable people are treated with absolute respect and care by the boys, by the girls. Then boys are allowed to, in my house, show pain, show mental health issues, be scared. There's a subversion of the ills. And the same thing happens in the village. We sometimes create a space around someone as an admin, and we'll say, you may not agree with the way this person is phrasing something, but her pain is authentic, his pain is authentic. Please listen and please take care. And that is a kind of life lesson that I think, as I said earlier, parenting humbles you, so does aging. And I am almost 60 years old. And I think that it's no coincidence that I've found my way to this community and this product at this point in my life. It is a point when perhaps you have enough self-confidence to both look after yourself on one hand, be the role model in terms of powerful, fulfilling your own destiny, being strong and clear about your own boundaries, but also enjoying the joy of serving others and finding how wonderful the fusion of the two is. So, yes, in my family as well, I've had to juggle those two things my whole life as a working mother. If you ask my kids what I was like as a parent, all three of them would say hardworking.
mm.
And I always had my own ambition and my own dreams and my own desires for my one perfect, precious life. But at the same time, the joy that I get out of working with something that aims to be constructive is so healing and so enriching that really I think it's been the most amazing gift anyone could have given me, really, at this point.
And there's a correlation again, because that then plays into the, sort of the mentoring of parents and seeing it play out. So, I mean, I've got the page open now in the book on, in the chapter of raising citizens to be proud of, in the section for participatory citizenship, right? Where you talk about this, and you give the practical suggestions, no right or wrong, but here are 8 ways that you can guide and model being a participatory citizen, whether that's recycling, donating blood, composting, picking up litter, collecting things for organizations who are in need, to name a few. Yeah, that's just the beauty of this book, right? There's just so many.
I've got to give credit to Karen, who wrote that chapter, my co-author, Karen
Yeah,
Shimka. She has a very, very, very strong, burning commitment to participatory citizenship, and it was thanks to her. I mean, it was one of the things that you learn very quickly is when you're offered help, take help. That's why
yeah.
the two of us wrote this book together. So yes, everything is in the book we agree with, but that was definitely her chapter, and it comes back to role modeling in the
Hmm.
end. I think if you, especially in a country where often the role models are hard to find, government, the institutions, government have let us down. It's easy as parents to take on a kind of toxicity of our own anxiety or grievance. It's that grievance and anxiety can be fed by social media, by general media. If you acknowledge that and say, but my responsibility, my greatest gift I can give my child is role modeling optimism, because optimistic people do better than pessimistic people. If I can role model being a net contributor, if I can teach my children those values, often because teenagers don't listen to you at all, of course, and neither do young adults, neither should they. The only power that remains with you is to role model that. And the beauty so much of parenting is that while doing it, you are also learning yourself, and you are also nurturing. And the focus of the village is on family and on whatever form your family takes, on helping you or supporting you to find that joy. Because through all of this stuff, we don't only hope to teach our children. It doesn't only go downwards. We need to let our children teach us, and we need to be open to the world of other parents as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of, and another another section in the book is let's talk about money, honey, which speaks into that of. I mean, all my life, I have not been the best with managing money, right? And if I look at my parents, they weren't either. And it was one of the cycles that I wanted to intentionally break for my kids. And and exactly that. In doing so, we're not there yet. It's a lifelong journey for me, but in doing so, I'm not only improving my own situation, well, more than anything, I'm improving, I'm getting better at
Of
budgeting and
course.
I'm getting better at
Yeah.
managing it. And in doing so, I can definitely see my kids, learning and seeing and implementing that. Not perfectly, but yeah, and for me that's exactly it, right? It's how we role model, that is the gift that we can give our kids.
Money is one of those really interesting subjects because it's taboo, and that's why we deal with it as we also deal with sex, with gender issues in the book. We go there because our belief is that not only the role modeling, but also what we've learned in the village is that talking is your secret power. As long as you can communicate with your kids, you've got the most incredible potential to to help and support them. So money is one of those things I think that people thought they shouldn't talk about. There's also in this country, and also because of social media, there's a new kind of persona to money, which is that we observe other people's wealth with our noses pushed up against the glass of our devices. And with that, so a subject on money is not only about how to budget or how to plan or how to pay for our kids' tertiary education, how to look after ourselves or our parents in the future. Money is also how we deal with things like self-confidence or
Hmm.
um, resilience or the absence of envy or jealousy, or how we value ourselves in a deeply unequal society. So in South Africa, where so many people don't have the power to show their love or to show to earn their children's respect through giving them things, what we are saying is there are so many other things that do not have a price on their head. So treating a woman with respect, showing the potential to keep on going when things are tough, learning how to figure out to make do with less. All of these things are incredibly powerful tools for a growing person to use in their life, much better than an overseas holiday, to be honest. I remember also when we were launching the magazine, we did some research, and I looked over the questions, and one of the questions was, who is your greatest role model? And our demographic of women was young Black women in our country, and this was 20 years ago. So it was very close to the kind of Rainbow Nation euphoria. I thought every single person would answer Madiba, and they did not. The person these women used as their role models were their mothers. The person they most admired were their mothers. The mothers who often had to sacrifice raising their own children to go and raise white women's children. The mothers who left them in the care of their grandmothers. So when it comes back to money, that chapter is so deep for me and so relevant in an unequal society. And one of the things I love about the village is that because people can talk anonymously, they can come at any time of day or night. We hear their authentic fears, we hear their authentic thoughts, we hear an unedited version. And around money, there is a discussion which allows us to deconstruct it because they are bringing their honest feelings when it before was taboo, but they're also able to dig deeper and find, again, in this particular South African way of market plan and fokfoot, excuse my language, um, find more meaning than what it appears on the surface, and find a path through that brings in all these other values that we try to infuse the village with. So a chapter on money will never just be a chapter on money. It will be on all the other things that are involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I that I think links me to another question that I have for you, because so much has stayed the same for what we need to be to parents, and as you say, it's just to be there and to communicate and to be that person, as Oprah suggests. But then, of course, there is a whole lot of other stuff that has been thrown our way, from tech, social media, and I mean, even money. For me, one of the big things of money now is exactly that. Like, the kids are scrolling, and my 14-year-old is desperate for an iPhone, and I'm like, but it doesn't make sense. But in her world, it 1,000% makes sense, and it's so much more than just a phone and all of that. Um, so, from your perspective of what you see in the village, and where you've come from, what do you think distinguishes Gen Z and Gen Alpha? So, yeah, the tweens and teens, from previous generations, and kind of the impact that that does have on our parenting. Again, that's a massive question, but
So I think we are parenting across generational revolution. The digital revolution cannot be understated. They are digital natives. Many of us are not. Um, Even in the spread of my own children, the older ones look at the younger ones with horror and feel that they had more autonomy, had more freedom from the power of the device.
And again, as I was thinking about this, one of my big fears as a parent is social media for my kids, or for my teens. And on the one hand, I know it's where they hang out and communicate and have that sense of belonging. But on the other hand, um, I don't think that we've got it right yet. I think that there's a lot of danger and mental health and um but then I was reminded again of, here I am having a conversation with you, getting so much advice and insights from parents, and where am I getting that? On social media, right? So how can I stop my daughter from that experience. Um, and then again, it goes back to how I think just getting that balance right, and how you've also managed and modeled the experience on social media for your community, right? I mean, I know that you're called the kindness ninja because you will go in there and put the boundaries up um, and model how you want the community to roll. So for me, that was a great kind of reminder of being open to see things differently, from not just my perspective, and then also to have the conversations of to keep having the conversations and to be able to guide my children, I suppose.
One of the great messages I think that we should
Mm.
share is that life is tough, and human beings will be and can be battered and bruised, but still beautiful. And I think as soon as we let go as parents of the notion that we can raise an unbruised child, or that we need to, the better, really, because there's so much of the world that we live in that is hard, hurtful, um, traumatic. And that, but unfortunately, is the nature of life. We live in a bubble of expectation that we will somehow reflect sitcoms. I think that there's a half an hour in which you face a challenge and solve it, and that is success. But that's not how life is meant to be. 99% of our planet does not have the luxury of wanting their child to go to an Ivy League college or to get into the A team in rugby in their private school. So the horrors of life are part of the deal. And the message is good parenting or loving adulthood is,
Mm.
I believe, is not to hope that you can solve that or that you can stop that, but that when shit happens, and excuse me using an ugly word, but when shit happens, that you can still look at that child and that adult, that human, that person with admiration, love, the absence of shame, the absence of fear, that there's a way out, that you can model dignity in the face of hardship and in the face of unfairness. Because if we look at a country like, for example, the amount of shame that is involved in gender-based violence, that is involved in sexual abuse, the damage that is done after the fact by not having someone that told you you were still beautiful, you were still worthy, you will still have a good life, I think is almost on a par. So accepting that in a weird way, has freed me from so much anxiety and worry.
Yeah,
And I'm of the belief that maternal, particularly, anxiety is a cancer to a family and a child.
sure.
So I did mention that we lost a child. My stepdaughter died at the point that my oldest child hit adolescence. And to be honest, once that happens, for me, in a strange way, I became almost more optimistic because my attitude towards my own children, the surviving three, was how wonderful you're breathing. We're in the game. We've still got a chance. We're all right. We can still put our arms around each other. So setting the bar lower, looking at people realistically without idealizing or fetishizing their outcomes, I do believe makes for a better path through this mess than the alternative.
Um, for all of our listeners, this book called We Were Perfect Parents Until We Had Children. This is a book that you want on your bedside table. It's not one of those books that sits there that shouts at you every day because you haven't read it yet, but it's one to devour in the first weekend you have it. And then I think to keep next to your bed so that you can dip in and out of it over the next 5 years, 10 years, however long it takes to get through this parenting phase, which I suppose is forever. It'll give you hope. It'll give you courage. It'll give you really practical ideas for so many things, from conversations to have, mantras to live by with teens, reminders, just like this conversation, of some of the really important things that we need to model for our kids. As well as this book really just feels like the warm hug from fellow parents that remind us that we're not alone, that there is hope, and that we are, in fact, imperfectly perfect parents for our kids. One of the sections and quotes that I also loved from the book is, being a good citizen takes being a good person a little further. And so, Vanessa, thank you. Talk about modeling being a good citizen. Thank you for creating this community, for co-authoring this book, and really for the legacy that you are creating in helping thousands and thousands and thousands of us to be better parents, cooks, friends, partners, listeners, drivers, you name it. Thank you. Really, it's amazing. We will chat soon. Get your books, everyone. They are available in any good bookstore, and I believe on Kindle as well. I will put all of the links to where you can get the books, and of course to the Village, the various social media platforms that you can find the Village on. Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you, Jude. Appreciate it so much.
Thanks for listening to the Future Smart Parent podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation. As always, you can head over to www.futuresmartparent.com to sign up to our email list, as well as check out all the links and resources in the show notes. That's all for this episode. See you next time.